"Are you lost too, mister?" asked a little girl at the airport. What the lonely CEO did next. The airport was loud, bright, and always moving, but for Daniel Carter, it felt strangely empty. He sat alone on a long metal bench near Gate 47, his black coat neatly folded beside him, his phone resting face down in his hand. Around him, people rushed past with rolling suitcases, children laughed, couples talked softly, and announcements echoed again and again through the wide hall. Daniel noticed all of it, yet felt disconnected, like he was watching life through glass. Daniel was a successful CEO, known in business circles for his sharp decisions and calm control. At 42, he had built a powerful company from the ground up. He had money, respect, and influence, but none of that helped him now. He felt tired in a way sleep could not fix. This trip was just another meeting, another city, another hotel room that looked the same as the last. His assistant had booked everything perfectly, as always. Still, he felt lost. He looked at the large screen above the gate. His flight was delayed again, 2 hours. Daniel sighed quietly and leaned back, staring at the ceiling lights. He remembered when delays used to make him angry. Now they barely touched him. Nothing really did. As he sat there, lost in thought, he felt a small presence nearby. At first, he ignored it. Airports were full of people. But then he heard a soft voice, unsure but clear. "Are you lost too, mister?" For a moment, Daniel didn't answer. No one had spoken to him like that in years, not without wanting something, not without fear or respect or formality. "Lost," he repeated quietly. The girl nodded and looked around the busy terminal. "Everyone is walking fast. My mom said stay close, but then there were too many people." No adult stood nearby watching her. No one called her name. People passed by without noticing her at all. "What's your name?" Daniel asked gently. "Emma," she said. "What's yours?" "Are you waiting for someone?" she asked. "I'm waiting for a plane," Daniel said. "Oh," she replied, thinking. "Me too, but I don't know where my mom is." Then my legs got tired. "Do you remember where you last saw your mom?" he asked. "She was buying coffee," Emma said. "She told me not to move. I didn't. But then there were lots of people." "You sound like my mom." "But he doesn't live with us anymore." He had chosen his path, but listening to Emma made him realize how quiet it had become. "We should probably find your mom," he said after a moment. Emma nodded. "Okay, but can I sit here a little more? I'm not scared when you're here." "Of course." "You said staying helps," she replied. He sat down again. Time passed slowly. People came and went. Announcements echoed. Emma told him about her school, her favorite cartoons, and how her mom worked very hard and sometimes looked tired. Daniel listened to every word. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about work or deals or numbers. He was just there, present. And without realizing it yet, something inside him had already begun to change. Daniel stayed seated beside Emma as the airport continued to move around them. The noise felt distant now, like a soft background sound instead of something sharp and tiring. Emma leaned slightly toward him, her backpack resting against her knees. She watched people pass by and quietly pointed out different things she noticed, like a man running while holding his shoes or a family laughing loudly near the snack shop. Minutes passed, then more minutes. Daniel checked his watch again. Airport staff had promised they were searching, but large places took time. He felt a strange calm mixed with concern. He had handled company problems worth millions without stress, yet this small girl sitting beside him mattered more than any meeting. "Do you think my mom is scared?" Emma asked suddenly. Daniel turned to her. "She might be worried," he said honestly, "but parents are very strong when it comes to their children." "My mom always says that." The worker smiled and said they were doing everything they could. After she left, Emma sighed. "Talking makes waiting easier," she said. Daniel smiled this time clearly. "You're right." Daniel let out a quiet breath he didn't know he was holding. He realized she was right. Something about the simple conversation had softened him. He felt lighter, even though nothing had changed yet. Emma began telling him about her last trip on a plane. She talked about the clouds looking like cotton and how she pressed her face against the window. Daniel listened closely, imagining the scene through her words. He found himself answering her questions honestly, even the ones adults usually avoided. "Do you live alone?" Emma asked. "Yes," Daniel said after a pause. "Is it quiet?" she asked. "Very quiet." A group of people rushed past, causing Emma to grip the edge of the bench. Daniel noticed and gently moved closer, not touching her but close enough for comfort. She relaxed again. "You're good at waiting," she said. "I've had a lot of practice," Daniel replied. "Waiting for what?" That answer surprised him as much as it surprised her. Time continued to stretch. Daniel's phone buzzed with messages from his assistant asking about the delay. For once, he didn't respond immediately. This moment felt more important. Another announcement echoed through the terminal, calling out names that weren't theirs. Emma listened carefully every time, hoping to hear her own. Each time it wasn't, her shoulders fell just a little. Daniel noticed. "It's okay," he said softly. "They're still looking." "Really?" A woman slowed her steps and looked relieved seeing Emma with an adult. Daniel realized how important presence was. Just being there changed how safe the world looked. Another airport staff member returned and said they were close to finding Emma's mother. She explained there had been confusion due to a gate change and crowded lines. Emma listened carefully, then looked at Daniel. "See," Daniel said gently, "strong. Someday." "Thank you," she said, her voice shaking. "I was only gone for a minute." As Emma and her mother prepared to leave, Emma looked back one last time. "You're not lost anymore," she said. Daniel watched them walk away into the crowd, holding hands tightly. He sat back down, alone again. But the loneliness felt different now, softer, less heavy. For the first time in years, Daniel didn't feel invisible in a crowd. And as his boarding announcement finally echoed through the terminal, he realized that waiting had given him something he didn't know he needed. Daniel boarded the plane later that night, but his mind stayed behind at the airport. He sat by the window, seatbelt fastened, lights dimmed, yet he barely noticed the engine's low hum or the soft voices around him. His phone rested in his hand again, unread messages stacked on the screen, but he didn't open them. He kept seeing Emma's face, the way she spoke so honestly, the way she trusted without fear. As the plane lifted into the air, Daniel looked down at the city lights growing smaller. He had flown hundreds of times before. Usually, takeoff meant relief, another task completed. This time it felt different. Something inside him felt unsettled, like a door had been opened and left that way. During the flight, he didn't sleep. He thought about small moments he usually ignored. Emma swinging her legs. The way she said loud could be good. The way she asked if he lived alone without judging him. Those simple questions stayed with him longer than any business discussion ever had. When the plane landed, Daniel stepped into another city, another clean hotel, another quiet room. He placed his bag down and stood still, listening. The silence felt heavier than before. He turned on a lamp and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. For the first time, he felt the weight of all the evenings spent alone, all the dinners eaten without conversation, all the success that echoed but never answered back. The next morning, Daniel attended his meetings as planned. He spoke clearly, made decisions, and impressed everyone in the room. From the outside, nothing had changed. Inside, everything felt different. He found himself distracted, not by stress but by thought. During breaks, he caught himself watching people instead of emails. He noticed who laughed, who looked tired, who sat quietly like he had at the airport. That night, instead of ordering room service, Daniel walked outside. He found a small cafe near the hotel and sat by the window. Families walked past. A father held a child on his shoulders. A mother tied a shoelace. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest again. Not pain exactly, more like awareness. He finished his meal slowly and returned to the hotel, but he didn't turn on the television. He sat at the desk and opened his laptop. Without fully planning to, he searched for information about airport child safety programs. He read about lost children, volunteers, and support systems. He didn't know why he was doing it. It just felt right. Days passed. Daniel returned home. His apartment greeted him with its usual order and quiet. He stood at the door longer than usual before stepping inside. He noticed how everything was exactly where he left it: clean, empty, controlled. He unpacked slowly and then sat on the couch, staring at the city outside his window. Emma's words returned again. "Are you lost too, mister?" At the time, he had thought it was just a child's question. Now he realized it had been much more. Daniel had always believed being lost meant failing, losing direction, losing control. But maybe being lost meant something else. Maybe it meant standing still for too long while life passed by. The next morning, Daniel made a change, a small one but important. He walked into his office without rushing. He greeted people by name. He asked how their day was going and waited for the answer. Some looked surprised, some smiled. One assistant even laughed softly, unsure if he was joking. He was. At lunch, he didn't eat at his desk. He went outside and sat in a park nearby. Children played, dogs ran, people talked. The world felt louder than his apartment, but this time loud felt good. That evening, Daniel called his sister. They hadn't spoken in months. Work had always been the excuse. The call was awkward at first, filled with pauses, but then it became easier. They talked about simple things. She told him about her children, about school events and small problems. Daniel listened more than he spoke. After the call ended, Daniel sat quietly, but the silence felt warmer now. Over the following weeks, Daniel made more changes. He adjusted his schedule, not dramatically, but enough to breathe. He began supporting a local program that helped families navigate busy travel spaces. He did it quietly, without his name attached. It wasn't about recognition. It was about purpose. Sometimes, late at night, Daniel still thought about Emma. He wondered if she remembered him, if she ever thought about the man who waited with her at the airport. He hoped she felt safe. He hoped she felt heard. One evening, while waiting at another airport for another delayed flight, Daniel noticed something. He wasn't sitting alone with his phone face down anymore. He was watching the people around him. He noticed a nervous teenager traveling alone, an elderly man looking confused near the gate sign, a tired mother rocking a baby. Daniel didn't step in every time. He didn't need to. But he stayed aware, present. A small boy passed by, dragging a suitcase too big for him. The boy smiled at Daniel. Daniel smiled back without thinking. As Daniel sat there, he realized something important. That day with Emma hadn't changed his life in one big moment. It had changed the way he saw it. It reminded him that connection didn't need planning and meaning didn't need permission. The boarding announcement echoed through the terminal. Daniel stood up calmly, not rushed, not tired. He felt grounded in a way he hadn't felt in years. As he walked toward the gate, he understood that he hadn't been lost because he didn't know where he was going. He had been lost because he forgot to look around. And now he was finally learning how to find his way again. Daniel's life continued to move forward, but it no longer felt like it was pushing him. He was moving with it now, step by step, aware of each moment. Weeks after the airport encounter, his days looked normal from the outside. Meetings, calls, reports, travel. But inside, something steady had taken root. One evening, Daniel found himself back at the same airport. Not the same gate, not the same bench, but the same wide halls filled with rushing people and rolling luggage. His flight was delayed again. This time he didn't sigh or lean back with tired eyes. He stood near a coffee shop, holding a warm cup, watching the crowd. He noticed how often people looked down, at phones, at the floor. At nothing. He remembered himself doing the same thing for years. Nearby, a young mother struggled to fold a stroller while holding a crying baby. People walked past without slowing. Daniel hesitated, then stepped forward. "Would you like help?" he asked gently. The woman looked up, surprised, then relieved. "Yes, please." The woman thanked him again and again before leaving. Daniel returned to his spot, heart beating a little faster. It felt good. natural. As he waited, Daniel thought about how easily that moment could have passed unnoticed before. He would have been too busy, too distant, too focused on his own path. Now he saw how many small chances for kindness existed in one place. His phone buzzed. A message from his assistant reminding him of an early meeting the next morning. Daniel replied with a short confirmation, then added something he had never written before. "I'll be offline after 9 tonight." He stood outside her house for a moment before knocking, listening to laughter from inside. When the door opened, her children ran past him, nearly knocking him over. The noise filled the space, and instead of feeling uncomfortable, Daniel smiled. Dinner was messy and loud. Questions flew at him from all sides. Where do you live? Do you fly a lot? Why do you wear suits? He answered honestly, simply. No titles, no stories of power. After the children went asleep, Daniel and his sister sat quietly at the kitchen table. She looked at him closely. "You seem different," she said. Daniel nodded. "I feel different." Silence didn't scare him anymore, but he also didn't hide in it. He was learning balance. A few days later, an envelope arrived at his office. No company logo, just his name written carefully on the front. Inside was a short note from an airport community program he had supported quietly. They thanked an unnamed donor for helping create clearer guidance points for families and children. Daniel folded the note and placed it in his desk drawer. He didn't feel proud in a loud way. He felt calm. Another trip came soon after. Another airport. Another delay. Daniel sat near a window this time. Outside, rain tapped gently against the glass. He noticed a little girl sitting a few rows away, holding a stuffed animal and talking softly to it. Her father stood nearby, distracted by his phone. Daniel didn't approach. He didn't need to. He just watched, aware, ready if needed. For the first time, Daniel understood that caring didn't always mean acting. Sometimes it meant being present enough to notice. That evening, as his plane prepared for takeoff, Daniel closed his eyes briefly. He thought about how much had changed since one simple question from a child. "Are you lost too, mister?" He realized now that the question had never been about location. It had been about direction. When the plane landed, Daniel didn't rush out with the crowd. He walked at an easy pace. He noticed signs he used to ignore. He noticed people. At home, Daniel began making space in his life. Not just in his schedule, but in his heart. He joined small gatherings instead of avoiding them. He listened more than he spoke. He asked questions and waited for answers. One weekend, he volunteered quietly at a local event that helped families learn how to prepare for safe travel. He handed out simple guides, smiled at children, and spoke calmly to parents. No one knew who he was. No one needed to. A little boy tugged on his sleeve and asked where the restroom was. Daniel smiled and pointed him in the right direction. The boy waved and ran off. Daniel felt the same warmth he had felt sitting beside Emma. That night, Daniel sat on his balcony, city lights glowing below. He thought about the man he had been before, always moving, always chasing something he couldn't name. He didn't feel regret. He felt understanding. Life hadn't changed him overnight. It had invited him gently to step back into it. And Daniel had finally accepted. Daniel woke up one morning and realized something simple but powerful. He was no longer waiting for life to happen. He was already inside it. Sunlight filled his apartment, softer than he remembered. For years, mornings had felt rushed or empty. This one felt calm. He made coffee and stood by the window, watching the city slowly wake up. People walked their dogs. A delivery truck stopped at the corner. Somewhere below, someone laughed. Daniel breathed in deeply and smiled to himself. That day, Daniel chose to take time off work, not because he was tired, but because he wanted to. He called his assistant and explained calmly. There was no panic, no pressure. The world did not fall apart because he stepped away for a day. That alone felt like freedom. He spent the morning walking through a nearby neighborhood, not the busy business district, but a quiet area with small shops and trees. He stopped at a bookstore and spoke with the owner. They talked about favorite authors and old paperbacks. Daniel bought a children's book without fully knowing why. It just felt right. Later, he sat in a park with the book resting on his lap. Children played nearby. Parents watched from benches. Daniel didn't feel like an outsider anymore. He felt like part of the scene. He thought about Emma again. He hadn't seen her since that day, and he likely never would. But her presence remained. Not as a memory that faded, but as a reminder that small moments could shift a life. In the weeks that followed, Daniel continued living differently. He didn't make loud announcements or dramatic changes. He simply chose people more often. He checked in on coworkers. He accepted invitations he used to decline. He listened without looking at his phone. One evening, his sister called and invited him to attend a school event for her children. Daniel agreed without hesitation. Sitting in a small hall filled with parents and noise, he felt proud, not of achievements or success, but of being there. As time passed, Daniel noticed something else. His work improved. Not because he worked more, but because he worked with clarity. He made better decisions. He trusted others. He allowed space for ideas to grow. His company felt more human and people noticed. Months later, Daniel found himself once again at an airport. This time, he arrived early, not out of habit but choice. He sat on a bench near a window, coffee in hand, watching planes move slowly across the runway. A little girl walked past holding her mother's hand. She laughed and pointed at something outside. Her mother bent down and listened closely. Daniel felt warmth in his chest. He realized he no longer needed the airport to remind him of what mattered. He carried that lesson with him now. An announcement echoed through the terminal. Daniel's flight would board soon. He stood up calmly and joined the line. As he waited, a man ahead of him dropped his boarding pass. Daniel picked it up and handed it back. The man smiled and thanked him. It was a small thing, but Daniel knew now that small things were never small. As the plane took off, Daniel looked out the window. Clouds stretched endlessly, bright and quiet. He thought about the man he had been before, always busy, always distant, always searching for something he couldn't name. He wasn't angry at that man. He understood him now. Life had spoken to him once through a child's simple question, and instead of ignoring it, he had listened. When the plane landed, Daniel stepped forward with steady steps. He wasn't lost anymore, not because he had found all the answers, but because he had learned how to stay present. Somewhere, a little girl was growing up, safe and loved. Somewhere else, people Daniel hadn't met yet would cross his path. He didn't know what moments lay ahead, but he knew this. Sometimes, a single question asked at the right time doesn't just change a day. It changes the way a person chooses to live. And for Daniel, that made all the difference.